How you doing?
Good, Joe. How are you getting on?
Yeah, great. So how was it? I mean, just for starters, it looked cool.
Yeah, it's even to drive as you're driving from maybe let's say Knock towards Ballyhonus, and you just come upon it out of nowhere. Like it's out in a real, I suppose, real rural countryside, and it's just white. I don't know how you describe it. Just pops up out of nowhere. It's an absolute incredible facility, and listen, we were delighted to get the opportunity, obviously, to play in it. And I had been there a couple of years, 2 years ago, just as it had opened. We were in walking around it, and but just to get to play in it was a great experience, and especially the weather being that night. It was a stormy, horrible night. It just made it even more appreciative of the facility to have it. But yeah, all in all, couldn't rate it highly enough.
Yes, and so the pitch played well.
Pitch played well. Yeah, listen, I'll be honest, George, like any AstroTurf. I think nowadays, obviously, AstroTurfs are a lot more common. But in terms of a quicker pace to the game, definitely. Probably struggle for maybe likes myself, an older fella, but for a younger lad, there's plenty of pace. And I suppose it does give you false potential in terms of the bounce of the ball. Going forward, obviously, the National League is going to be a lot different in terms of pitches and that. But for a spectacle this time of year, it definitely made for a better game of football than it would have been had it been outside in one of the other pitches in the centre of excellence in the wind and rain.
Well, I was just going to say, it's not a 121 to 117 scoreline out there.
No, without a doubt. And I think Andy spoke after the game, and I think he heard him mention, through the years playing FBD, as he said, 8-7, 9-8, 10-8, whatever games like that. Going in at half time, I think it was 110 apiece, and could have been a lot more from both teams. So, listen, for the spectators' point of view, I think it was a great game for them to watch as well. Whether in competitive action you'd like to be in it is a different question. But I suppose over the years we played in New York a number of times, and obviously they have AstroTurf as well over there, but be it a lot warmer. But listen, something very similar. But again, really, really enjoyable experience.
Yeah. Just for people who didn't catch earlier on in the show, I was just mentioning that the Dome, it cost 3 million. So 2 million of that came from the Rural Regeneration Development Fund. 700,000 came from Croke Park, and then 300,000 came from Connacht GAA. So that's how they came up with the 3 million. Full-size indoor GAA field, running track, a fully equipped gym which can accommodate 30 people at once, and a portable stand as well, so they can hold 2,000 at the games. And then if they want, they can, in the space of 72 hours, have it ready for up to 20,000 people seated and standing for concerts or events. So look, amazing for the west of Ireland as well to pioneer something like this.
Yeah, completely. And I think, listen, it's well known in the west of Ireland. Obviously, the weather here, maybe up in the East Coast there, is a lot better than it is here. And I think over the years, for school football especially, a lot of games have been called off in general. I suppose, and it's making very much useful for schools around Connacht to use the facility. I think that's where they're going to get their main reward from it. But for inter-county teams to be up there and used, and I think, as Andy says, the surface is probably maybe something more similar to Croke Park than what we'd be used to up this direction. And as he said himself, teams here in Connacht can definitely make more use of it. And in fairness to John Prenti, he's put massive work into getting it together, up and running. And I think every other province is probably looking over a bit envious to Connacht with it at the minute.
Yeah. Minor quibble, I'm sure, if it is the case. Were the posts hard to distinguish with the background?
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, we went up there training last week, and you kind of got a wee bit used to it. But
if it is the case, were the posts hard to distinguish with the background?
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, we went up there training last week, and you kind of got a wee bit used to it. But I've seen a couple of comments. People are saying maybe you should change the colour of the ball as well, because in mid-flight, obviously your whole backdrop is completely white, and obviously be it the goals as well, that maybe it's something that could look down the line, whether a different colour of a football even as well, and even different colour of post, because it does take that extra fraction of a second to maybe see the goals. But again, going with the scoreline, some of the boys didn't have any problem with it.
Yeah, well, I guess they've changed the sliotar colour. They can change a ball easy enough. So you're back this year, 34 years young, and you're obviously playing club football away with St Mary's, based in Sligo Town, and working as a guard, I understand, as well. You've been away from Leitrim for a couple of years now. Explain that to me. Was that a mixture of injury and then maybe even not being picked or not being brought back? So the absence from Leitrim for the last couple of years.
Yeah, listen, I suppose I never really retired as such. 2019, obviously we got promoted, which was great under Terry Hyland. Myself and Terry maybe had different issues and listen, in my own game, maybe he didn't believe in much as me as I did myself, and game time was a lot limited for me under him. I struggled to deal with that. I have no problem saying that. And I spoke to Terry, and I walked away after Roscommon defeat in the championship in 19. I met with Terry the following year, hoping to come back in, but he told me that wasn't possible. And
Right.
then again, I met him in 2021. I got in touch, and again, he told me in early January that no, he didn't want me coming back into the panel. So it was very straightforward in terms of that. Obviously, I was very disappointed. I suppose I've given a lot to Leitrim over the years. I didn't want my career to end like that, albeit I didn't think the opportunity would come again. And then obviously Terry left, then the appointment of Andy, Mike, James and Barry came in. And again, I never really thought about it, to be honest, Joe. James Clancy rang me initially about something else to be friendly with James, and he just asked me what I was thinking of my plans were, and I hadn't really thought about it. He said there'd been trials coming up, if they'd be more than welcome to come. And I suppose I just come home and said to my wife that I was going to go up and see where I was at. And obviously I did enough to impress for Andy to call me back into the squad. Right. And it was great to get the opportunity to train hard for the last 2 months. And it was absolutely delighted to get the start, obviously, on Monday night gone by, albeit we're missing a couple of maybe starting players due to COVID and all that sort of thing. So maybe that was gave me that extra bit of opportunity to get the start. But yeah, listen, it's just brilliant to be involved, Joe. Andy, you know Andy, obviously, and he's been on the shoulder. He's a great fella, first and foremost. And
I'm sure he's bringing a great energy and a great atmosphere to things, all right, yeah. And
I've just got back to enjoying football, really, and I suppose that's all down to him.
Right, okay, interesting. So that sounds like Terry Hyland doesn't pick you, you're used to being picked, think you should be picked, you're not happy, strong exchange of words, and basically he's not having you back after that. And that was potentially how your Leitrim career could have petered out. Yeah,
to a degree. The lack of communication, I suppose, in terms of where I was at and I was being told, I found it very difficult. I didn't know whether it was coming or going, and it was causing me a lot of stress and anxiety at the time. And yeah, as you said there, maybe it was just something I wasn't used to, and I was really struggling because I thought I was in good shape. I was going well at the time, and my confidence was just knocked. And obviously, stepping away from it then was the best thing for me. I had a fresh start then here in Sligo. Obviously, living here now the last 6 years, and I just decided confidence was just knocked. And obviously, stepping away from it then was the best thing for me. I had a fresh start then here in Sligo, obviously living here now the last 6 years, and I just decided to go brand new start for myself. And again, never in the back of my mind really did I think I'd get back involved. I thought ship the sail now. I just turned for 34 there Christmas, so but no, I've kept myself in reasonable enough shape, Joe. I've been training hard. I'm doing everything I can possibly do to keep myself going, but whether it be that only 10 minutes a game I can offer, or whether it be only whatever I can, I'll do as much as I can. But I know the expectancy going in there. I'm sure Andy, in fairness to him, so far as communication has been brilliant, and if he doesn't want me in there, I'll happily be the first to say fair enough and too old for it. But at the minute, things are going well, thank God.
And how did you go in the trial game? I mean, it must have been a long time since you've played in a trial game in your life, so you obviously did okay, but what was that experience like at 33?
Yeah, listen, sometimes you just have to rein in the ego, you know, Joe, and just...
I'm Mulligan, I don't audition anymore. That's not the way you lead.
And in fairness to me, I just said to myself, if this is something I want, I have to go up and prove it, because at the end I hadn't been involved for 2 years. So listen, there was other players from last year's panel still in them trials as well, you know. So obviously went up, it did go well. I'd be honest, I thought it did, and thankfully, as I said, going forward from then, there hasn't been any hiccups along the way. But yeah, listen, I just had to put the head down, and that's all I've been doing since. I've been in there like a new fella. Like I felt like I was nearly making me debut there on Monday night. There was a big bit of nerves and anxiety again, but listen, that's all part and parcel of it, and I hope to improve as the weeks go on. And whether, as I said to you, I only offer a couple of minutes here and there, but I'll be putting pressure on the likes of Keith Byrne, Darragh Rooney, Ryan O'Rourke. You know, that'll be my role, is put pressure on them that I want to get a starting place all the same, be it I'm 34, but feeling a bit younger anyway.
Yeah. So you made your Leitrim debut in 2006, and were one of the real, I didn't get to see you enough. This is the point I suppose I'm getting to, but you're one of the real marquee forwards, and must have been difficult, I'm sure, at times. Like, let's park, because there's the current regime under Andy, and there's great enthusiasm about that, and that's great. But say from 06 up until under your last game with Terry Hyland, that kind of period, I remember seeing you on several occasions. I think on one occasion even you were there doing the draw for RTE for the Connacht Championship, and I think you got Roscommon, and you kept getting Roscommon around that time, and you know, they asked you, geez, you must be looking forward to it, and you're meant to say, yeah, well, look, we'll give it a lash, we can beat anyone on our day, that kind of thing. And actually it was amazing, the start of the year, or it would have been winter, even would have been in the depths of winter before even the new year. From memory, you kind of were like, to be honest, it's a bit demoralising. It's the same routine every year.
Yeah.
And almost stunned silence.
that was the downfall of my career under Terry Hyland, to be honest, I think.
Right, he didn't like that. Didn't like that, yeah. But there was a realism about that, which I can't suspect you were the only person thinking that. Maybe you shouldn't have said it, but that is the reality of playing for a Division 4 side like Leitrim.
Yeah, I recall that draw vividly, and I just remember, I think it was John Cantwell turned around to me, and I just was like, I'm deflated. I was like, 4th year in a row, we're scomming preliminary, win that, you have to beat Mayo, win that, beat Galway, and I was just like, let's be realistic here. I said, we're bottom of Division 4, like, unless we even get out of Division 4, possibly we can compete. But listen, all I was trying to highlight was the structure of the championship, and people were getting on to me at the time, and then listen, 2 years later the whole country's on about it, saying it's unrealistic.
Yes.
So, but yeah, listen, maybe I shot myself in the foot speaking openly. Sometimes maybe I need to keep my mouth shut, but listen, sometimes I just rather speak the truth than about it, saying it's unrealistic.
Yes.
So, but yeah, listen, maybe I shot myself in the foot speaking openly. Sometimes maybe I need to keep my mouth shut, but listen, sometimes I just rather speak the truth than turning around to Tony Smith beside me going, oh, this is a brilliant draw, we're going to hammer it. Like, they were operating in Division 1, so you have to be realistic at times, Joe. And sometimes people don't like to hear the realism, and it's not about a negative attitude or things like that. Again, it was just being realistic at that time in that moment. And obviously, listen, we're still down there. You live in hope every year completely, but you just hope you have to get your own house in order, get out of Division 4 again, and then see where you can progress. But you can't try and get up to the top of that mountain without trying to progress through the stages, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. And hopefully Andy, if he gets in there for a couple of years, he can definitely bring them up to maybe Division 3, competing at the top of Division 3 at least,
Yeah, but I'm sure, like, after those comments, you had plenty of fridge magnet wisdom coming your way, and you have to believe first or you're not going to win, and you got to aim, shoot for the moon, and you might land in the stars, or all this nonsense, whatever the latest saying is. But there was a reality there. So did that reflect a certain you used the word deflating, a certain deflation, or a certain kind of hopelessness which ran throughout a good chunk of your inter-county career? Has it been a bit of a struggle in that respect to get excited each year?
Yeah, it's like, obviously you said 2006 I made a league debut against Donegal in Ballyshannon, like, and we drew with Donegal that day, and we were very competitive under Dessie Dole in 2006, 2007, even championship 2008. We were Galway better, I think it was 3 points up in Pearse Stadium, like, in the Porrick Joyce, the likes of him playing, with Michael Meehan, Sean Armstrong, Cormac Band, and we were competing with them teams. And even the later year of 2006, I'd left the panel to play with Sligo Rovers, but I think Mayo bet Leitrim by a point in Park Sean, went on to All-Ireland final. Then there was obviously revolving managers. Mickey Moran and John Morrison came in, and we went through a tough period with them, and we lost Philly McGuinness, then part of the team member, part of the panel that year, and one of them years, and it was just up and down. We got the Sligo win in 2011, which in fact is my only iconic championship win, right. Outside of New York.
That's it, is it? Sligo
London.
2011, that's the one.
Sligo 2011, yeah, and
right.
It's been a roller coaster since. Yeah, it's been ups, there's been downs, and obviously the highlight probably was obviously getting promoted then, obviously under Terry. But I'll be honest, that year for me, it was kind of a very limited game time, and I suppose I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought it would have been, and I was carrying a bit of a niggle then into the final. But yeah, listen, it's been ups and downs, Joe, and every year you do get into that huddle and you try to convince yourself. And I suppose when I done that draw I was in my 30s when that draw was an RT, and I suppose the older you get, the wiser you become.
Yes.
And you just become more realistic. But listen, you don't I suppose I can understand what people have said. There's younger lads in that panel and maybe looking up to me and to see me speaking in a negative way as such. But for me, it was just more realism than being negative,
No, I think anyone with a brain can understand where you're coming from at that stage. And so for you, well, I guess you probably weren't thinking in terms of making a big comeback this year, but when you were watching all the Proposal B discussions, what was potentially there for Leitrim and Proposal B was 7 games in the summer against opposition of a similar stature, and if you come out on top of all that, chance for a big day at Croke Park, that must have been, the idea of that must have been kind of manna from heaven for you. 7 games across the summer. Were you disappointed when that didn't go chance for a big day at Croke Park? That must have been, the idea of that must have been kind of manna from heaven for you. 7 games across the summer. Were you disappointed when that didn't go through?
Yeah, and again, it would have been it wouldn't have been on me for thinking about myself, because I wouldn't have thought I probably would have been involved this year. But even for the other lads in Leitrim, friends that are still playing, I would have thought, well, at the end, there's more games. You need games to improve, and whatever level you're playing at, like, obviously you need to be competing against good teams as well, and teams your own level. But there's players there, I'd say, from Mayo, maybe in one championship year could play 7 or 8 championship games in their first season, would be as much as a Leitrim lad might play in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
For us to try and get that balance right, We need games, and that proposal definitely, I think, would have suited in some way. Obviously, albeit there's maybe small flaws here and there, but I'm sure over time they could have been ironed out. But I still think all hope isn't lost. In the next couple of years, maybe hopefully Larry McCarthy can have another look at it again and see where it's at. But there is such an imbalance there at the minute. There's no question about that. And listen, obviously the National League is realistically it's your championship starting out.
Yeah.
Like we've London now this year in the championship. Obviously, hope it's never easy for us to go over there, and then you have the winners of Galway and Mayo again, which is again a massive ask. But we just have to get our preparation right now for the league and then build on that and see where it takes us.
So debut in 06. How many championship appearances do you have then over 13, 14 years?
Overall, Joe, if you go through it, I do very few.
Would you have 25 even?
I doubt. I have to sit down. Probably wouldn't even have it. No.
But isn't that
I've injuries? Yeah.
But isn't that dreadful for great player for 12, 13 years, and you probably don't even have 25 championship appearances, maybe 20.
Yeah, and looking back on them, Joe, there's none of them. I suppose the reason I don't know about, I can't remember half of them is I don't want to remember them, to be honest. I've taken we've taken some heavy beatings over the years.
What's a dressing room like then in a county like Leitrim when it's your third year in a row against Roscommon, hammered out the door? I dare say even last year against Mayo was pretty grim. Like, does anyone even bother afterwards to say, "Oh lads, we'll go again next year," or "Don't drop the head"? I mean, or we'll win the qualifier, or is it fairly resigned?
Yes, it can be fairly resigned. It can be bleak, all right, at times. Listen, you always you kind of head off into town after and have your skip of pints, and I suppose when that happens, you don't be long forgetting about it, and boys are happy to go back. But the problem is, it's happening too often. Players are probably starting to accept it, and it doesn't get easier, but it just becomes the norm.
Yes, the routine,
the routine. And I think for me especially, you go in there, and no more now when I'm in that bubble with any team I'm playing with, you still always believe you can still beat Mayo or beat Galway. I suppose then when you're convincingly bet, you might step away and go, Jesus, what was I thinking there? But again, that all comes from your own attitude and your own whatever your mind frame is. And maybe I have a worse mind frame, because definitely generation wise over the last 15 years I've been on the back of a lot of them, but there's a new generation coming through in Leitrim, and it seems to be they have a lot less baggage, obviously, but there's definitely seems to be a lot less fear, because I think they're a lot more competitive at underage coming through minors, 20s and that sort of stuff. So at least there possibly is a better mentality coming through. And so for me, it's just maybe keep them out shut now for going forward for this year.
Yeah, shut it down after this. Bridget's in Dublin for 4 years, and now you're playing with Mary's in Sligo, and Melvin Gales were your home club. Were you down the years ever approached by another county to make a transfer?
No.
Right. I thought you would have been ripe now for a little phone call.
No. Listen, there was different. Obviously, I grew up in Donegal, living in Bundoran. Moved to Kinloch then I was about 9 or 10 years of age, and there was always a link there that could have potentially went across the border. And one of my best friends there, Paul Brennan, obviously did that move and worked. Probably worked out massively for him. These 2 Ulster medals now. But yeah, listen, it was never something. At the end of the day, I think for me personally, I made a name for myself, luckily enough, in football, and I was lucky to go on to do a bit of punditry, RT and things like that. And I think had I gone to maybe another county, that might never have happened for me. And Leitrim made me who I am today, and I never look back and regret in terms of the years I put into that, committing to it. And again, this year again will be no different, given everything to it. And just as no more than anyways, leaving the jersey obviously in a better place. And I felt I did that even in 19 when I stepped away. But again, it's just to go in there now, and even if I'm a positive influence around the dressing room or whatever I can offer in some positive way, that'll be my role obviously this year, hopefully going forward, Joe.
Great. Well, listen, that sounds super, and I'm sure under Andy it will be a very enjoyable experience. So best of luck. This is definitely a nicer way to finish up, be it this year or next year or year after. Yeah.
Don't get ahead of yourself now, Joe. Next week. We'll take every week as it comes.
Good man. Well, listen, Emlyn Mulligan, great having the show. Enjoy the season. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right.
Off the ball on News Talk.